Hello, my name is Salvador Bondoc. I am here to talk about creativity, its significance in education for the 21st century, and how we may infuse creativity in our teaching practice. According to the Smithsonian Institute, part of what makes us human is how we became human. Our evolved anatomy has enabled us to walk upright, use prehension, and adapt to various environmental conditions. Our evolved brains enable us to develop tools to fend off large predators and hunt large animals for survival, form social networks, and develop language to communicate with each other to strengthen our social bonds. At the intersection of our capacity for adaptation, social interaction, and communication is creativity. Creativity is what allowed early humans fashion cutting tools out of wood and stones and develop symbols and sounds for expression. Creativity is the singular attribute that sets humans apart from and above all other species on Earth. Through human creativity, we developed the technology to engineer bridges and vehicles, produce and process goods to sustain us, and connect us globally and beyond. In turn, technology has tremendously altered the human landscape by the way we learn, work, connect with each other, and live our lives, at times with harsh consequences, such as people holding routine jobs being replaced by technology. From the switchboard operators and assembly workers to bank tellers and data entry clerks, almost all industries or enterprises are left unspared by the influence of modern automation and machine learning. In their groundbreaking study, University of Oxford scientists Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne predicted that in the coming decades, 47% of employment in the United States labor market are at risk from disappearing due to computerization. The influence of technology in our future livelihood may be perceived more as a threat than a promise, but it's not technological advancement that is to be feared, but rather the loss of creativity. Here's why. In the same study, Frey and Osborne also identified groups of occupations that are least likely to be substituted with computerized capital. Among them are those that require high levels of creativity. So not only will creative occupations thrive, they will also be indispensable in the economies of the future. Engineering and science-based professions that rely heavily on computer technology will also likely thrive because of the drive for innovation and infusion of creative intelligence. Just as how human creativity has brought our society to where it is now, creativity is a human singularity that will propel us into the future. The future of our global society will depend on harnessing this power, and it starts with rethinking how we educate our students from the early years and through college. At the time when creativity in all enterprise comes in high demand in increasingly globalized economy, many industries have lamented the dearth of creative minds in the workforce. In recent decades, thought leaders and scientists have documented a decline in creativity which seemed to occur as children and adolescents transition into adulthood. There's a general agreement among them that such phenomenon has much to do with the way we educate our students, which has not changed much from its origins in the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago. In the late 1960s and through mid-1980s, Dr. George Land conducted a longitudinal study of 1,600 preschoolers using a creativity test he developed to see how their creativity evolved over time. This is the same creativity test adopted by NASA to select innovative engineers and scientists. At age 5, Land observed that 98% of the children scored in the highly creative range, but by the time the children reached the age of 15, the 98% dropped a staggering 12%. Dr. Land administered the same test to hundreds and thousands and millions of adults with the average age of 31 years and found that only 2% scored in the highly creative range. This finding does not imply that creativity is totally lost in adults. Instead, Dr. Land suggested that our naturally divergent brains have been restrained by a rule-bound and standards-based educational culture, which then de-incentivizes creativity or make our creativity dormant. Sir Ken Robinson, a thought leader in creativity and education and author of the most viewed TED Talk of all time, Do Schools Kill Creativity, described a similar phenomena by stating, "We don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it, or rather we get educated out of it." As a call to action, Robinson urged education leaders and policymakers to rethink the school system in which we educate our children. I would also argue that the same call be extended to the way we teach students into higher education. In 2017, scientists from University of California, Berkeley, discovered that at various points in our lifespan, we utilize different learning strategies and how at an early age, our use of learning strategies is at its most flexible. This cognitive flexibility declines as we age and is related to the accumulation of knowledge, which can create bias. However, a playful, protected environment may lead to more flexible, exploratory, and childlike learning, even in adulthood. The study reinforces the notion that proper environmental conditions can foster creativity, regardless of setting and age groups. How do we do this exactly? There's no one single best answer. Ironically, we are merely inhibited by the limits we impose on our own creativity. There's no doubt, however, that creativity in education is no longer about a question of whether, if, and when, but rather more of questions of what and how. We may begin by settling on a common understanding of creativity and how it interfaces with teaching, and diving into action, expecting iterative innovations. Robinson defined creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. He further contrasted creativity from and established its linkage with imagination and innovation, two terms that are often used interchangeably with creativity. According to Robinson, imagination is the ability to bring into mind the things that are not immediately perceived as present in our senses. Through imagination, we conceive something in our minds as if they are real or perceived by others. As a mental process, imagination is the wellspring of creativity. Creativity then becomes applied imagination. At this stage, there may be outcomes. However, the results produced may or may not be what we imagined them to be. This is where innovation comes at play. Innovation is when we put creative ideas deemed as having value into practice. But since the innovative output is subject to value judgment, original ideas should be subject to refinement to make them even more valued by the society. In the words of Thomas Edison, innovation or invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That is, the perspiration is about putting ideas into action and also evaluating their impact and adjusting these ideas and actions according to evolving situations. In 1999, the UK's National Advisory Committee on Creative Cultural Education released a report called All Our Futures, Creativity, Culture and Education that spurred widespread educational reforms in the United Kingdom and beyond. One of the key recommendations is teacher training, with particular emphasis on teaching creatively and teaching for creativity. Teaching creatively refers to the use of imaginative approaches to make learning more interesting and effective, while teaching for creativity is about developing students' own creative thinking and behaviors. Creative learning requires that students experience innovation, find relevance in what they are learning, have substantial control over their activities, and take ownership over their learning process. Scholars have also emphasized the role of the educator in setting parameters and aims of the learning, being transparent about their own creative thinking process, scaffolding students' independence through self-assessment, and soliciting and using various feedback so that students find meaning and direction about their work. The aim of teaching creativity, teaching creatively, and teaching for creativity is not necessarily about teaching to produce the next Leonardo da Vinci, Alan Turing, or Freddie Mercury. Rather, the claim is to produce citizens who can fluently lead and navigate the 21st century society. They shall possess essential attributes such as being globally connected, competently strategic, creatively analytical, and conceptually imaginative. Researchers James Kaufman and Ronald Bighetto offer a useful framework, the 4C model of creativity, to conceptualize creativity as both a process and product of education. The 4C model, which consists of the mini C, little c, pro C, and the big C, portrays creativity as a continuum or a trajectory that one may experience in life. Kaufman and Bighetto began with delineating everyday creativity, also known as the little c, from eminent creativity, also known as big C. Everyday creativity refers to the production of something novel and useful in everyday contexts, such as home, the workplace, and the social setting. Examples may include making a fancy meal for friends who have various food allergies, or adjusting the workflow and work schedules to accommodate reduction in staffing at work. On the other hand, big C refers to genius levels of creativity and may require time before the level of genius is recognized. In expanding the little c and the big C dichotomy, Kaufman and Bighetto added the mini c, which refers to the production of creative ideas and understanding that are personally meaningful, and pro C, which refers to effortful progression of creativity beyond the little c, and that is likened to the development of expertise through deliberate training and experimentation. By categorizing various forms of creativity and aligning them with theory and research, Kaufman and Bighetto paved the way to innovating methods to teaching and assessing creativity. Take this scenario. A learner who is embarking on a novel task may experience mini C, or the beginner aspect of creativity. Through self-reflection, they may realize their openness to new experiences and active exploration upon their capacities for undertaking new experiences. Through subsequent exposures to active experimentation or tinkering with ideas, they may evolve the mini C to little c, where they adopt strategies, interpretations, or ways of approaching situations in everyday life. The mini C experience may also stimulate strong interest that drive the student to pursue more deliberate learning and skip to pro C forms of creativity. Who knows, maybe among thousands of students, one will leap into big C level and someday be recognized as the next Steve Jobs, Steven Spielberg, or Stephen Hawking. Even when we don't aspire to produce the next industry genius with the big C, faculty and leaders in higher education should aim for promoting the pro C. To achieve pro C requires domain-specific knowledge. This notion is further punctuated by Tim Leunig, who argued that creativity depends on and should not be isolated from teaching literacy. Therefore, as students gain a depth of understanding in a given subject matter, educators should seize opportunities to tap into their students' inner creative to develop their pro C by looking at various applications of knowledge they gained, including how it may be integrated with other bodies of knowledge in order to solve problems or develop innovations. My final thoughts. There's no doubt that the 21st century classroom will be marked by teaching that's amplified with technology and ready access to information. However, these are not the major drivers to success in the 21st century workplace. Creativity and the ability to use information in meaningful and imaginative ways are, and educators are important agents that can make this happen. Just as creative expressions are varied, there are no single most effective ways of teaching creatively and teaching for creativity. As creativity goes, your limits are endless. To that end, I've arrived at a few guiding principles to share with you that I myself incorporated in my teaching practice. First, consider various solutions to a problem, not just the one best or obvious choice. Adults are conditioned, if not biased, to filter out what does not make sense and instead gravitate more towards the most obvious solution to a problem. Excluding the least obvious options right away may result in missing out on significant detail that may prove to be useful in the end. Key to fostering creativity is allowing the mind to be divergent, which trains the brain to be more flexible as ideas are brought to awareness. Second, be open to the idea that the best option may have an expiration date and that it requires rework to be relevant again. Great innovations don't often come in one neat overnight package. They often are a product of multiple attempts over time to get it right. And with environmental conditions and life situations being unpredictable or always changing, innovations need to be also re-examined, reworked, and redeployed, or perhaps even retired. Lastly, practice reflection and reflect on practice. Creativity has been linked to self-awareness. Self-reflection is one powerful tool for promoting creativity by promoting the awareness of one's thoughts and the meaning we associate with those experiences. Self-reflection helps us become more aware of our biases and thinking, thereby helping us to be more open to imagination, the foundation of creativity. It is my hope that you find these nuggets of wisdom useful in your creative trajectory. And in closing, I'd like to quote or paraphrase Dr. George Land, that you find your inner 5-year-old and reclaim your creative nature with openness. Thank you for listening.